14 ministerial nominees out of the 28 names have been screened by the Senate, with many of them pledging to contribute their wealth of experience to whatever task they will be assigned. Meanwhile, former lawmakers and governors, including the APC acting national chairman, Senator Abubakar Kyari, and former Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike, were asked to take a bow in accordance with Senate traditions. Arise correspondent Georgina Ndukwe-Zainka has more.
It is day one of the ministerial screening for nominees sent to the Senate by President Bola Tinubu. One after the other, the nominees were ushered into the Senate chamber by the Sergeant at Arms. Out of the 14 screened nominees, 4 of them are women, including the youngest nominee, Betta Edu, who at just 36 years has accomplished so much as the national women leader of the ruling party. The same was said of the other female nominees screened.
We must get the right governance and the right structure from the top all the way down to the health facilities. Who are those manning it? Who are the managers? Who are the planners? Is it properly planned? And what are those adjustments and streamlining that needs to happen? Like a distinguished senator rightly said, there are federal medical centers everywhere. There are teaching hospitals everywhere. How functional are they? What quality of service can they offer? As it concerns the health workers that are leaving, a couple of things can be done. Number one, we can change the payment structure for health workers to see that they get better incentives and they can stay on. They are leaving because probably a country like Saudi Arabia promises a greener pasture, and that's why they're leaving.
I am going to introduce what they call urban centers. I will bring in machineries, industrial machines. Then I will get with the town criers to get to these villages. We are going to get them to learn those tradings, different kinds of trading. And we have an outlet because it's a professional that will come in to teach them. And as they're being taught, they're equally working to produce these things like female clothes, babies' clothes in our own material.
At the end of my stay at NAPTIP, we were able to prosecute over 300 cases. The most significant one, or the most celebrated one, was was that of one madam in the UK, because it was in collaboration with the British government. She was prosecuted from the UK. The crime she committed was in Germany, and her assets are still undergoing confiscation. And she was being caught in Edo State, partnering with the Interpol and other relevant agencies.
The nominee from Taraba State, Mohammed Nladi, had the toughest session after petitions against him alleging that the Supreme Court had barred him from taking any public office in the next 10 years. His explanation was not quite convincing enough to the Senate, prompting the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, to order an investigation into the matter. Meanwhile, the nominee from Benue State, Professor Joseph Utsev, was grilled on the alleged discrepancies in his biodata.
There was a Supreme Court decision that tended to debar him from holding office for a couple of years. So maybe he can comment on that and just take a bow.
There was no any Supreme Court pronouncement banning me for 10 years in the judgment. It's just speculations of my enemies. If you look at the judgments, my judgments are here with you, before you, sir. There's no any judgment indicting me that I should not contest for election.
You graduated in 2004, meaning that, you probably will have spent almost 9 years for your first degree. I just need you to clarify those data. I hope you understand, starting from primary school to why it took you that long to also get your first degree despite the academic brilliance that you have exhibited.
1990, 1991, 92, 93, 94, 95. That is when I got my SSCE. That's when I got my SSCE. Then I graduated in 2004. Yes, what happens that I was actually supposed to pass out in 2003, but there was a prolonged strike. If people remember, there was a prolonged strike by ASU. Then I did a 5-year program in engineering. which I was supposed to stay there for 5 years. But because of the prolonged strike, I spent 6 years for the program. That is why I graduated in 2004.
The usual take a bow, which has become a tradition for former lawmakers, featured prominently and was also extended to former governors. The likes of the acting national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Senator Abubakar Kyari, Senator John Eno, Honorable Nkiruka Yejocha, including the former governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, and former Jigawa State Governor, Abubakar Badaru, were all asked to take a bow without much drilling from the lawmakers.
While I was leaving 27th of May, Mr. Senate President, I was commissioning, I was flagging off a project. These things can be achieved if you are committed, if you have passion for the job. And I thank Mr. President for nominating me. I believe, knowing how hungry Mr. President is to solving the problems of Nigeria, we have no choice but to give him that required support. And I can assure you, if I'm confirmed, in whatever capacity, Mr. President will not regret nominating me.
Most of the ministerial nominees talked on issues such as nation building, energy security, improving the healthcare sector, revamping the education sector, water security, and fighting insecurity in Nigeria. Well, at the end of session today, 14 nominees were screened at the Senate chambers. They all responded to questions from the lawmakers on varying issues of national importance. The screening session continues tomorrow, Tuesday, by 11 a.m. Georgina Ndekwezaika, Arise News.
Well, we still have Dr. Sam Amadi and Somna Sambo in the studio with us to look at the screenings so far. Let me start with you, Somna. I mean, since we started with Dr. Amadi here earlier. 14 out of 28 nominees screened so far. What are your impressions in terms of the quality of nominees and the quality of the screening itself?
Well, some of the nominees have actually given an account of themselves. I mean, a few bright spots here and there, like Better Edu. You could see the former or the incumbent Nigerian ambassador to Germany, Ambassador Tuga. And you could also see, you know, some of those brilliant people that, you know, came out to actually say much, like Iman Suleiman, who's from Nasarawa State. You could see a few bright spots here and there. But, you know, because of this bow and go tradition in the Senate, we couldn't have so much to be heard from people like Abubakar Kyari, Senator John Eno, and all of that. So not so much grilling went on. And for these other people like Nyesom Wike, and of course, you all know how friendly some of these former governors are. But one that really caught my attention was Abubakar Badaru, the former governor of Jigawa State, when he said, look, he's been a businessman, and not many people know that he's into different kinds of businesses like mining, and he has companies in different parts of the world. I mean, I had always known him as a politician, as someone who's proudly called the calculator, because I mean, most of the APC conventions where he was the election committee chairman, including the primaries. And so I saw some things from him that I never saw before, and some future plans that he said that he'll be able to put in place, and that especially in terms of the Nigerian soil, there's so much in it. He has been trained to see where success lies in the Nigerian economy, and then of course to smell gold when others are actually not looking at what can make this nation much more better. When you look at people like Governor Nyesom Wike and some things he has done, yes, I mean, there were lots of people who didn't want to ask much, because, I mean, you could see the way the Senate President conducted the session. It was as if he had already cleared former Governor Nyesom Wike himself. But generally, I think the Senate should be careful not to turn itself into a circus in such a way that when people come before it and they are supposed to be properly grilled, they are just left to go. Look at the Professor Joseph Usef from Benue State. There were lots of things that were left to be answered. Clinical questions asked by people on, for example, the issues that we have with Lake Chad and the waters drying up on the Nigerian part of it. He wasn't allowed to answer those questions very well. And then a few people who had been asked to talk on several issues, but they were not allowed to properly give answers to it. So my bright spot for the day still remains Dr. Betta Edu and just a very few of them who were able to, discharge themselves. We need to hear these nominees out, even if they are federal lawmakers. Give them 5 to 10 minutes to address the nation, then before you do your bow and go.
Okay, that's interesting. Good to know. Now, Dr. Amadi, let's look at the composure of the 14 screened nominees. Their mannerisms, how convincing do they sound? How do they come off? Because in leadership, it's important to, handsome is as handsome does. So what impression do they give when you see them coming out for screening?
I think they all look confident because they know this is just, open and close. Nobody faced any real fear that they will not be confirmed. Again, let's step back. Nigeria suffers from ignorance of procedure and essence of everything. Confirmatory hearing we take from the US Constitution. Now the idea first, 3 things are wrong. First is it doesn't make any sense to appoint a minister without portfolio. I can't end emphasizing this. When Yar'Adua was in power, I wrote a memo to the Senate president then and said, David Mark, and said, look, you guys have to do it different. Second, why do you have to give people portfolio? Well, the chief of staff has argued, we want to make it open so we can change it. No. Every of those politicians are qualified to be minister. The constitution says the qualification is to be able to run for House of Reps. 30-something years, school cert or its equivalent. So what are you screening for? You screen to match people to portfolio. And I'll give an example. Assuming your wife is a counsel to ExxonMobil, your son is the general secretary of Shell, and you are being asked to man the petroleum sector. We'll ask you a question on conflict of interest. We want to hear from you how you manage that closeness. And that's what happened, for example, in the US. When Hillary Clinton was nominated for Secretary of State, her husband has Clinton Foundation. And during the screening, she has to give undertaking on how she handle issues around disclosure. That's the point we're missing here. So that everything here is a joke. Look, you have to tell us, everybody's qualified to be a minister. For example, you're asking people questions on water, whereas they're going to be assigned healthcare. Number one. Number two, this notion of bow, you see, clearing is not a privilege. Clearing is that you are saying that this person meets the requirement for the office. So when we now, all former honorable members, all former governors, all former senators, all former House of Assembly, very soon all former PAM secretary, what then is their sense? And third issue, you shouldn't screen ministers in plenary. That's not screening. Plenary is where you bring the result of the committees. Because if you say, for example, Nigeria has a major crisis now with security. As we have a Minister of Defense, the Defense Security Committee screens that person and asks more detailed questions. The guy who's talking about the school cert and his age of experience. These are areas you do that. So when you come to plenary, that report is now what to do with politics. So maybe the PDP group will say, no, we don't agree. And then, of course, the APC will use their majority to confirm. You see, the process of confirmation is not just to disqualify people. It's to allow nominees to make commitments. It's to allow the people to confront them with issues that they need to address, relevant to the portfolio they assigned. So for me, everybody there has to go on. Look, Wike, former governor, did very well, but there are issues you should have asked him. Why are you leaving your party to be serving that party? You might have good reason, but that's part of what the confirmation is all about. You see, one of the nominees who allegedly had a certificate crisis, like the man who the Supreme Court allegedly, reportedly banned for 10 years. Mm-hmm. This Justice Committee would have had that Supreme Court judgment, certified copy, confront him, and then recommend disqualification. So we have done everything wrong, and I expect that a terrible government with all the hype around innovation would have changed the game. Again, I think that nevertheless, the National Assembly, Senate should please have the courage to disqualify anybody with wrong certificate, with lies on his paper. We are already a republic of fraud and forgery. We just have to end that.
Sambo, according to Dr. Samamadi here, the Senate has to find the courage to disqualify where it is required. Based on what we have seen today, especially with this senator, did I say senator? The ministerial nominee from Benue State, Utsev, did we get any clarification as to the discrepancy between his, date of birth, 1980 or 82, when he finished secondary school, university, and all of that? Did we really get that clarity at the end of the day before, being let to bow and go?
We didn't, and that's where I actually disagree with Dr. Samamadi here. I don't think that this Senate has the capacity to disqualify any of the nominees based on the conduct of the Senate on the very first day. We could see that the Senate President was in haste to actually want to make that nominee to just want to go away, and he had to be, interjecting with questions, trying to even look like he was answering on behalf of the Professor Usev. And I found it, not befitting of a Senate President. I mean, he should have just allowed the nominee to answer for himself. And for the fact that this nominee is coming from the same state with the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, I thought that would have gotten someone so much better. So that you don't have a nominee that will be causing problems on the floor of the Senate for the president who has put you there. And of course, there's no how, for example, that George Akume wouldn't have had a hand in the nomination of this nominee. Because there were some very good questions that were asked in terms of water security, in terms of the issues of his discrepancy and all of that were there. But of course, we didn't get satisfactory answers from a professor of water resources. I had expected so much from the opposition lawmakers there, and the Labour Party and PDP lawmakers must be called out here, including the YPP and those who are there, SDP. Because we didn't see any action by the opposition to actually want to stand up against the governing party and some of these nominees who do not deserve to be there. Danladi Abubakar, who comes from Taraba State, is the one who was in the heat of the moment because of those certificate issues. And we have qualified lawyers in the House. We have opposition members that are supposed to stand up. And we saw how docile some of them were, including Nyesom Wike. Now, is the government going into a government of national unity? Or what is former Governor Nyesom Wike doing there? Did the PDP assign him to go to the APC? Or has he been suspended? Or has he left his membership of the PDP and he has now declared his interest to go into the APC? What of the questions as to what Wike has said, that he was never going to defect to the APC and that he wouldn't want a situation where he would want to take a ministerial position? Nobody asked these questions. The opposition lawmakers were all there asleep. So what is happening? Nigerians must hold their lawmakers to account, especially the opposition lawmakers. The Labour Party is a party that we are taught will go there and show some ideological differences from the governing APC and the PDP, which had formerly been a conservative. But we are seeing the Labour Party being like a neo-conservative party. And look, Nigerians should be out there. When the next batch of nominees come with people like El-Rufai, we need more questions from our representatives. Because these are ministers that are meant to serve us.
Let me button there. Somna, more questions I can see. Somna is on fire tonight, yet again. Dr. Amadi, let's look at the antecedent of some of these nominees, as Somna alluded to. Nyesom Wike, what did he do in his state to qualify him for a ministerial appointment? These other former governors, former senators, what did they do to qualify them? It's important to point on these factors. You want to react to this?
Sure, quickly. I mean, the president has a discretion to choose his team, and that's fact, constitutional. Nyesom Wike, former governor, people say, oh, Mr. Project, whether it's a hype, I've been building bridges and what do you call it, and Express Road, is seen here as development, as governance. But people can ask questions around. If you look at River State's standing on human development, they're standing in economic growth. Forget IGR from oil companies. Not much. But look, arguable. We can say great guy, we can say poor guy. Look at Umahi. Umahi has done a lot in terms of himself. He's an engineer. He has a company, probably does it himself. He built some bridges here and there, including the one close to his house. But look at Ebonyi. Ebonyi is the outlier in South in terms of poverty. I've been there before. You go through there, apart from the Abakaliki, the major places, you don't see any transformation in terms of human development. So the indicators are very poor. Oh, they build brick wall, build bridges. But nevertheless, I think the key issue is what someone has said. I think the disappointment is with the opposition party, especially the Labour people there. Look, government, this notion about one government, we have only APC is in power. PDP, Labour Party are in opposition. If these guys are not willing to be opposition legislators, they should resign their position and become ministers so that we can elect people who will put government to... We're not talking about fighting government yet. We're not even saying abuse the president or abuse the Senate president. We are saying ask questions. So I think that, look, for me, the president has a right, can choose dummies. But it's our job to interrogate them and say we are not going to vote them. These guys, like I said before, everybody in Nigeria who has a secondary school, who is over 30-something years, is qualified to be a minister. Right. But the question then is, it's our responsibility to find out whether they have the competence, the experience, the disposition, the character to feature as a minister. So all right. It's what it is. Opposition, if you fail, the president will have his way.
Well, it remains to be seen whether this will be the dream team. Dr. Sam Amadi, Arise Analyst, thank you very much. And Somna Sambo, Arise Director of News. Thank you, both of you. It's a continuing conversation, definitely.